On Network Africa. Raila Odinga rejects results of Kenya's presidential election, saying figures from Monday's announcement are null and void. However, celebrations continue in William Ruto's home following his election win. Plus, families of South African miners who were shot dead by police 10 years ago remember their loved ones yet to receive promised compensations. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tenyo Lashoboale. We begin in Kenya, where Raila Odinga has rejected the results of the presidential election, saying that the figures announced on Monday were null and void. Mr. Odinga accuses the head of the electoral body of blatant disregard of the constitution, adding that without reservation, he and his party rejects the presidential election results. Making his remarks in front of supporters in the capital, Nairobi, he said that there was neither a legally elected winner nor a president-elect. The 77-year-old longtime opposition leader was running for president for the 5th time. He has challenged the results in the previous 2 elections, including successfully in 2017. Well, despite the challenges in looming legal battles, celebrations continue at President-elect William Ruto's hometown. He opened the gates of his royal home in Sugoi, Western Kenya, to supporters who are continuing to celebrate his election win. In nearby Eldoret town, residents also took to the streets to celebrate. The supporters, some who'd waited all day watching proceedings on giant screens mounted on the streets of Eldoret, chanted songs and slogans to celebrate his win. Life has returned to normal following overnight celebrations. Business premises have reopened and public transport has resumed. Well, it's the day after Kenya's electoral body declared William Ruto as its new president-elect, and his excited reactions have been coming in from far and wide. African leaders have been congratulating President-elect William Ruto. Zimbabwe's Emmerson Mnangagwa, Nigeria's Muhammadu Buhari, and South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa have all tweeted their congratulations to the president-elect. However, some Kenyans have mixed views as they brace for a potentially protracted legal battle. But here are some reactions from a few Kenyans.
After a week-long wait for results of the August 9th poll, the chairperson of Kenya's electoral body declared Ruto the winner of the vote, beating his rival Raila Odinga by a narrow margin after a largely peaceful voting process. But the announcement did not calm nerves, as some senior election officials disowned the result, fueling fears of widespread violence like that seen after previous disputed polls. The announcement also sparked immediate reaction from Odinga's strongholds, with demonstrators hurling stones, erecting roadblocks, and setting fire to tires. In the western city of Kisumu, Odinga's stronghold, calm had returned to the streets after protesters battled police and burned tires on the road overnight.
I'm not feeling good because the results that was being announced has just embarrassed my feelings. Yeah, that is not the way the Chebukati could announce it. Yeah, that is something that is not making sense, by the way.
For Nairobi resident Joe Maina, he sees a bright future ahead.
We are seeing the bright future, considering the promises that the Dr. Ruto's have promised the Kenyans, we as the Kenyans, we have a high hope.
By contrast, the mood in Eldoret, Ruto's home turf, remains ecstatic the morning after the announcement, with portrait-waving Ruto supporters dancing on the streets.
And President-elect William Ruto has promised a bottom-up approach to the Kenyan economy, saying it will benefit the poor who are bearing the brunt of the cost of living crisis that has hit the world following the coronavirus pandemic and the war in Ukraine. Here's a look at the political and personal life of Kenya's fifth president.
This is William Ruto's first attempt at the presidency, and he has succeeded. Perhaps this is the same luck that saw him elected at his first attempt to Parliament in 1997 as MP for the Eldoret North constituency. The 55-year-old portrayed himself as the champion of the poor, as his childhood epitomizes the lives of many poor Kenyans. He went to primary school barefoot, wearing his first pair of shoes at the age of 15. He also sold chicken and groundnuts by the roadside in rural areas of the Rift Valley.
It's something which I could not imagine. As for us, we would imagine that because we could think that all those who are leaders are from rich families. I can just say God does wonders, because I could not imagine somebody who didn't have a shoe from all his life in primary school. The 8 years, 7 years in upper primary and the nursery school. He didn't have a shoe. His shoe, he wore it first time in class, in Form 1, in secondary school. So it's something which I could not imagine.
His powerful oratory, ferocious work ethic, and quick wits propelled him into politics, where he became a lawmaker aged 31 and a minister by 36. He painted the election as a clash between hustlers and dynasties, a jab at Raila Odinga and Kenyatta, son of the nation's first vice president and president respectively. He has therefore coined the phrase "hustler nation" to refer to the young people struggling to make ends meet. Mr. Ruto contested the elections under the banner Kenya Kwanza, Swahili for Kenya First, with a promise to grow the economy. The official rate of unemployment among those aged between 18 and 34 years is nearly 40%, and the economy is not creating enough jobs to absorb the 800,000 young people joining the workforce every year. Now, as Kenya's fifth president, he faces issues of corruption, COVID-19 pandemic-related economic slowdown, weakened consumer spending that has led to rising unemployment and poverty.
And now 4 of 7 electoral commissioners who refused to approve Monday's result have held a press conference to give their reasons. They accused Mr. Chebukati of sidelining them and of announcing results that were full of mathematic absurdity and defied logic. Juliana Chirara, the vice chairperson of the commission, said if you added the percentages as announced by the chairperson of the commission, the sum came up to 100.01%.
In the absence of a credible and verifiable explanation, we concluded that the process that went into generation of Form 34C, which he used to declare results of the presidential election, was opaque and incapable of earning our ownership and confidence. We state categorically that the results of the presidential election held in August 9, 2022, declared and announced by Mr. Wafula Chebukati on August 15, 2022, belonged to himself and do not represent the declaration and announcement by Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. The Commission has to process the results before they are declared and announced by the chairperson. That in contrary to the Constitution and legislation, By the time the chairman declared and announced the final results, results from certain constituencies had not been announced.
Meanwhile, a Kenyan election official who went missing shortly after last Tuesday's general election has been found dead. The body of Daniel Musuyoka was found near Mount Kilimanjaro, a long way from his base in the capital. The reasons behind his death are unknown, but the news has added to the sense of anger in the wake of the disputed presidential election result. And for more on those results, we have policy and governance expert at Sovereign Insight in Nairobi, Kenya, Vincent Kimosop, joining us now on the program. Thank you so much for your time on Network Africa.
You're welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What do you make of Raila Odinga's response? He has rejected the results, calling it null and void. Many have predicted he will challenge the results, so it doesn't really come as a surprise, does it?
I think that I look at two things from his statement. One is that he has exercised his constitutional right, which is provided for by the Constitution, where if you are not happy or you are concerned about the outcome of a presidential election, you can pursue redress at the Supreme Court. And actually, this is something that is bestowed upon anyone, not only Raila Odinga, but even any other Kenyan. So anyone can petition the court. I think for me, that is a move in the right direction because it's provided for in law. And therefore, it also will contribute towards strengthening the electoral process. Number two is that he's also talked about appeal for calm, appeal for peace. So I think for me, looking at those two, his rights and then appealing for peace is a welcome move, and we look forward to the courts that have demonstrated independence and impartiality in the past, that they will be able to judiciously deal with this issue.
Yeah, and as he heads to the courts, let's talk about the division at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. 4 commissioners say the results announced yesterday does not represent the IEBC stand. What are the implications of this?
Of course, there are two things from that. One, there are governance-related issues. And from a governance perspective, when a decision is taken by a commission, it becomes a binding decision. So it tells you clearly that there are cohesion issues that needs to be dealt with. This is traced back to, remember that these are 4 commissioners who joined the commission hardly, let me say, 2 years ago. So you would understand because that possibly they found a team that had found a rhythm. That for me would be the governance dimension. The political dimension is that it adds into the impetus and the journey for seeking redress in the High Court, so that we hear their side of the story and perspective, even as the country moves ahead to process this. The advantage, as I just said, is that the clear framework for seeking redress is provided for, and the courts will be able to deal with this issue. We've been in the past year, as you know very well, that our country has had a presidential election declaration nullified. So that will strengthen the confidence of the Kenyans that we have a process, we have a system that has been tested and continues to be refined and bettered.
And I mean, it's difficult not to notice the deafening silence from President Uhuru Kenyatta. This is a major blow to him, isn't it?
I will, I'm an analyst, and in analysis, we look for data. So the only data I can cite is he was supporting the Honorable Raila Odinga. So you would understand that at this time, as in it's very hard for him to play the neutral card and rally people towards a unity because he took sides. But I know ultimately we still have a president as a country who still is the symbol of national unity, who is the head of state and government. So responsibility still rests on his shoulder to speak to the country and just to say we had an election, there is a clear framework on settling disputes and also resolving them. and getting a new president to assume power. So in view, I think you have to appreciate where the president stood in this election, but also appreciate the fact that as a sitting president, there are responsibilities of that he has in terms of keeping the country together. And as you can see, we had a peaceful campaign. We went into the voting peacefully. The counting was done peacefully. The tallying was done peacefully until just the place of declaration. So you can even see where the dispute will be. We'll be just delving with the declaration. And allow me to say this. That in this election, the electoral management body put the results on the public portal, actually, which are accessible globally. Anyone who can do tallying, both for Form 34A's B, should be able to get the same results. So I think quite some progress, but we still have some work to do just to improve and better that which we have as a country.
All right, then policy and governance expert at Sovereign Insight, Nairobi, Kenya, Vincent Kimusop. Thank you so much for your thoughts and analysis on the program.
You're welcome.
And still ahead on the program. The first ship bound for Africa leaves Ukraine port. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. August 16 marks the 10th anniversary of what is now termed the Marikana massacre in South Africa, where 34 striking Lonmin mine workers were shot dead by police who were frightened and fired live ammunition in self-defense. Unfortunately, lives were tragically lost. 10 other people, including Lonmin mine security guards and police officers, died in the days leading to the massacre. Family members of those whose lives were lost are still demanding an apology from President Cyril Ramaphosa, who at the time in 2012 was chairman of Lonmin's B partner in Kuala. Mine workers started a strike on August the 11th, where members of the National Union of Mine Workers Leaders opened fire at striking members, resulting in 2 strikers being injured. From the period of 12th of August to the 14th of August, 10 people were killed as tensions rose.
It says a lot that we are still oppressed, in this country that we are in. Yes, things are democratic, but it doesn't really feel that way, because the voice of the people can't be heard. The people were just simply trying to, raise their voices, say we want a better livelihood in this nation. We want to live better, we want to earn better so we can take care of our families.
And to health matters, a 4th case of monkeypox has been detected in South Africa. Minister of Health in South Africa, Dr. Joe Fala, announced these findings on Monday. The patient is a 28-year-old male who has a travel history to Spain. Spain has been one of the worst-hit countries with 4,298 confirmed cases of monkeypox. Previously, the 3 cases in South Africa were of men between the ages of 28 and 42. They are not linked and were reported around June and July in 3 different provinces of South Africa. The Deputy Health Minister says monkeypox is not yet a concern in South Africa and a vaccine is not a priority, but rather people should focus on COVID-19. And away from South Africa, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations warns that parts of Somalia could experience famine this September. The United Nations agency also warns that 8 regions in the country could be affected if livestock continue to die, key commodity prices rise further, and humanitarian assistance fails to reach the most vulnerable. More than 3 million animals essential to Somalia's pastoral and agro-pastoral communities have died so far, and crop production has substantially dropped due to unprecedented poor rainfalls and intense dry conditions.
The Pope raised the plight of Somalians struggling to cope with drought in his address at the Vatican. The pontiff appealed to the international community to help Somalia as the country is in the grip of a hunger crisis. Since the beginning of 2022, Over 900,000 people were displaced. Hassan Abdul Quran, 38-year-old farmer from Dinsur, a town in the southwestern Bay region of Somalia, left home with his family after losing all their livestock and crops. They came to Dolo, more than 300 kilometers away, hoping to get some assistance.
There was severe drought in the country and no rain, so whatever we planted did not grow.
The number of people in need of urgent humanitarian assistance has increased from 4.1 million at the start of 2022 to 7.1 million people projected between June and September this year. To assess the situation and garner support for humanitarian response, the Interagency Standing Committee Emergency Directors Group recently visited the drought-affected areas.
Our focus is very much on livelihoods. It's providing cash to allow people to buy food to survive. It's about keeping their animals alive with emergency feeding, with vet treatments, with water supplies for animals in a drought context, which is super important. These are the practical types of activities we need to do.
The FAO is delivering assistance in rural areas and has reached about 265,000 households between January and June this year. But the scale of assistance currently being delivered and funding from the international community is not sufficient.
The first United Nations ship carrying the first cargo of humanitarian food supply bound for Africa has left the Ukrainian port of Pivdeny. Earlier, a joint coordination centre set up by Russia, Turkey, Ukraine and the United Nations said it had approved the ship's departure. The UN's World Food Programme, which bought more than half its wheat from Ukraine before the war, says 345 million people in 82 countries are now facing acute food insecurity and need urgent humanitarian support. Turkey's defense ministry says a total of 5 ships left Ukrainian ports carrying corn and 23,000 tons of wheat intended for the drought-hit Horn of Africa and Ethiopia. Global food prices have been driven up and fears of shortages in Africa and the Middle East have been on the rise. And finally in the programme, 2 sisters have taken it upon themselves to provide shelter and food for homeless animals. They believe all animals have the right to a good life and they've decided to raise awareness.
Libyan sisters Ibitsam bin Oman and Arabia drive their car every day to reach more than 150 dogs and cats which they feed in Benghazi. Their story with animals started during the war when dogs and cats used to flee bombs and bullets. This is when they decided to establish a shelter for homeless animals and had to sell most of their belongings to afford the food and medicine they needed.
We founded the association 3 years ago, aimed at raising awareness of the animals' right to a good life. We bought parcels of land under the name of the association, but we did not get the needed support to build them, and we sold our houses and cars in order to spend.
They still have major difficulties in supporting the animals, some of whom are injured and in need of medical attention, while others are paralyzed.
We face major difficulties in getting the food because we feed 100 to 150 dogs every day and 50 cats. Most people here are not cooperative or helpful. Only few are. We asked restaurants for help, but unfortunately, none supported us.
The 2 sisters, who are just few years apart, bond with the animals in addition to caring for them.
I guess you help in any way that you can. And that's the programme today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyo Olash Shabuale. Bye for now.